On the outside, it looked successful. Everything looked great. Multimillion-dollar business, wonderful relationship, nice car, nice suburb, sitting on boards, lots of awards. Everything looked great. But I was completely empty. There was a massive misalignment. And I realized that my why didn't align with what it was I had created. But I really took myself to that place, and having that awareness completely changed the face of everything I did.
Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings. One story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, changemakers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started. Music has a way of meeting us where we are, invoking memories from our past and often grounding us in moments of uncertainty. It creates space for reflection and deep healing, something we intuitively have known for centuries and are only now beginning to truly understand. Tenille Bentley's journey began in the corporate world, where she built a multimillion-dollar tech company by her early 30s and founded a global charitable initiative that reached more than 40,000 children across 5 countries. Her work included creating education programs focused on mindset and emotional intelligence, supporting schools, families, and thousands of graduates worldwide. But beneath the surface of boardrooms and strategic planning, she began to feel a quieter pull towards something deeper. Raised in a musical family, sound had always been Tenille's sanctuary. At the height of her professional success, she found herself burnt out, outwardly accomplished but internally disconnected. That moment led her back to sound, not as entertainment, but as a powerful tool for restoration. She began studying ancient instruments and their effects on the nervous system, emotional regulation, and the body itself, a path that would shape her career as a sound therapy specialist and the next chapter of her life's work. Her passion for diving deeper led her to co-produce the award-winning documentary, Does Sound Heal?, which explores the intersection of science and sound and how music and frequency affect the body's capacity to heal. Tenille is the founder of the award-winning Encanto Symphony Orchestra, which is featured in the film and is an immersive musical experience based in Western Australia that offers therapeutic and meditative experiences shown to reduce stress and support mental well-being. A globally recognized multi-award-winning entrepreneur, Tenille is also the founder of Alma Education, a global ed tech organization supporting emotional intelligence and mental health for children, families, schools, and workplaces. As a visionary in the field of therapeutic music, Tenille's work has been featured across national television, radio, and publications, highlighting her comprehensive approach to well-being and a true testament to her unwavering commitment to nurturing emotional health and human resilience worldwide. Tenille, it is such a pleasure to have you here with us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
So Tenille, as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, there is a lot of background that you bring. And so I thought what we might do is talk just a little bit about just kind of your beginnings, and then we can sort of dive into what you're doing now.
Many beginnings. I feel like I've had multiple beginnings. But it's I started, like you mentioned, in a musical family, and music was very much the sanctuary. Having grown up in a fairly violent home, I sourced solace and peace through animals and through music, and so those are really my two safe places that I could always go to, having been through what I experienced as a child. And so fast forwarding, it also gave me the gift of resilience and tenacity and almost this very calm, peaceful strength, inner strength that's very quiet, that has actually been the very thing that has got me through some of the hardest times in my life. we see the silver lining in these things later in life, and that sort of has been my journey in reflecting back at all the little pieces that made up that start and how it was actually contributing to supporting me later in life in a really unexpected way.
It's so wonderful because when I speak to you, I feel like you have a very grounded sense. You're very calm. And when I look at your background and I see how much you've accomplished,
it looks a bit ADHD.
Oh, no. I was going to say, I mean, it's just when I think of what you've built and the time that you have spent in business and all of the things that you have accomplished, I'm fascinated by your journey. So let's maybe talk a little bit about in your 30s, right? It was
Yes.
out of college. You went into business. Did you go into business on your own? How did you?
I started actually, my very first company going all the way back was actually when I was 8 years old. And apparently I didn't even realize I was doing it at the time. And I looked up to my mum a lot, who was a very high level businesswoman in the 80s. So it was always, she demonstrated a really beautiful strength to me that I wanted to aspire to be. And so she was very much that role model in the businesswoman, archetype. And so apparently at this age, I started writing my own little business cards with a pencil and a little card. And I went around to the neighbours, and we grew up in the bush. And so the neighbours weren't just next door. It was, a good kilometre walk away. And so I went and dropped all the cards to neighbours, and I was offering garden and car care and for $1. And but then what I thought, well, I don't really want to do all that, so I'm actually going to get the neighbour to do it for me, and I'll pay him 50 cents, and then I'll take a cut over the top. And so that was pretty much the entrepreneurial gene was born there, I think. And then it sort of fast forwarded into my business career. I never went to university, but I have lectured at many of the top universities to date. But I was one of those people, my learning technique was just throw me in and let me figure it out as I go. And so that was how I did it. So I jumped straight into work at 17 and climbed the corporate ladder up until about 23. And then I remember one day just sort of sitting there looking around at the boardroom table, and there was all men and it was just me. And I was looking around and I thought, they're going around in circles. They're not really getting to the point here. And I'm like, it was one of those moments where I was thinking, I could do this business thing. I don't know what they do, but I reckon I could do it. And so off I went and decided to set up and run 3 companies. And all at once, don't recommend it. But I did that whilst working full time in an oil and gas company, one of the largest ones here in WA. And I was co-managing 20 other staff at the time as well. So it was not like, just an easy job. But for some reason, I managed to find a way to get all my work done. And then I would start my businesses in the evening, and I would probably have about 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. I was young and tenacious. And I
was going to say 20 in your early 20s when that was possible.
Yes, exactly. And so, that really started the entrepreneurial career for me. And that was, 25 years ago or 20 plus years ago. So I began, and my first company turned over $500,000, and then I left my day job. And then after that, I think I was about 23 or 24 at that stage. And then I'd also, parallel to that, had started the Global Good Foundation, which was my way of, giving back. And I realized that, your mess becomes your message. And so for me, that was my journey. In my childhood, I wanted to be able to gift to children a voice, because a lot of the time in those situations you don't have a voice. And so I built the Global Good Foundation as, I suppose, an elixir, if you like, of my medicine to give to the world. And we ran leadership camps for children and teens, and we also worked with adults. But back then I still had the gift of self-awareness and inquiry, and I knew that it wasn't about us pigeonholing that this person is the perpetrator and this person is the victim. And I always allowed it to be a facility that could support people with a whole family unit, not just the people who have been impacted. Because I suppose because I had that gift of inquiry as a child. I remember as young as 10 being in some awful situations, and I remember looking at that and going, now, why don't I know what to do? And being like really inquiring, well, what can I do? What can I do? And so that was the charity, became that. And it was a full circle moment because both my parents ended up helping fundraise for the charity, the very charity I built because of the situation. So it was a really beautiful full circle moment. And so that was one of the businesses. And then it sort of started from there. And 25 years later, I've been just building businesses, and I fast-tracked myself into board positions and, won awards and recognised by the Prime Minister and the Telstra Businesswoman Awards and things like that for all the work I was doing, which was very heartwarming, but not the reason why I was doing it. So it was just, I was just on this mission to build this business, and I build multiple businesses, but one of the ones that was a success, many failed, but then also the successes was certainly the tech company and the charity that started, and moving into Alma.
So, and I was just going to say, because I know, and we will be listing more of just your full bio on the show notes, because I find it absolutely breathtaking, to be honest with you. There's so much that you have done. But what I was going to ask you is, so when you built the tech company, and then you had so you were kind of in 3 different sort of ponds, then 2 different ponds. After that, did you get to a place that you kind of took a step back? Because I know the sound therapy came later, right?
Yeah,
so how did that transition feel for you? What was the moment? Knowing that you're still on advisory boards, you still are obviously very well connected in all of those.
Yeah, I was very heavily in the corporate world. I was often on ASX listed boards and on $400-500 million boards as the youngest woman at the time, and often the only woman at the time. So it was quite a feat at that time when I was sitting on board, and I had board positions then. But yes, it was, there were some really defining moments, I think, that really shifted for me. The one that comes to mind the most, which I'm certainly not proud to share, but it was a big moment for me, was because I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop for about 2 to 3 years to build that tech company. I would say that I lost myself a lot because I was burnt out. You can't think straight when you're like that. You're not operating in your truest self, so you're operating in survival. And so I was in survival. And then couple on top of that, ending an 8-year relationship, my father diagnosed with leukemia, and a whole bunch of other things that came along where it just felt like my world was crashing down suddenly around me. But the pinnacle of the moment was we were hiring staff so quickly at this point in this tech company that I'm sitting at my desk, and this person opens the door, they walk in, and I look over and I say to them, "Can I help you?" And they look at me and say, "I work here." And that was my moment. That was like, my heart just like sank, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've become that person. And that was really a defining moment. And then I really had to reevaluate, why was I even doing all this for? What was it all about? I remember at that point, and it's so funny the way, whether you want to call it universe, God, I call it God, reorganizes life for you when you suddenly have the awareness, this, when the student arrives, the teacher is already there, like it's already waiting for you. And so, at that moment, I almost felt like I heard God say, like, she's ready. It's time. And so everything began to reorganize. The large contracts that I had for the company, I started to realize that they were taking me for a ride, and I had to come and they were trying to poach, because what I was doing at the time, it's not anymore, but what I was doing at the time was quite innovative. And a lot of people were either trying to copy it, or one large company was actually leveraging my company and my staff to be able to first test it, and that gave me a whole heap of clients and built up my business. But I held all the resources, and I had a very unstable contract that sat with that. So as a result, all of that came crashing down, and I had to make 35 staff redundant because I pursued using my intuition, which I think is a gift that really is a superpower in business. And it saved me millions of dollars. And the result of me having that awareness, also knowing the cues and understanding the change in tone of language of people and the people I was dealing with, I started to realize I was being taken for a ride. And so I got in before they could do anything.
Was it a marketing or digital agent? What was the...
Yeah, it was a digital tech agency. So we really focused on social media. At the time, social media was not used at all. in corporate, if any. It was very underutilized. And so there was a huge education curve. So I just came in on the beginning of that curve, basically. It was good timing. One of those things with any business, sometimes there's a combination of really good timing and a lot of luck and a lot of hard work. And so I did all those things, but yeah, it was one of these moments where I realized that things were going to start changing. And it was interesting that the defining moment was that moment where I started to question. I started to go, hang on, is this who I want to be remembered as? Is this how I want people to remember me? And it wasn't at all. And as soon as I had that awareness, everything began to reorganize. The company started to break down, the relationships broke down, everything just went and it was just like time stripped everything away. And I remember this moment where I was sitting, I took myself off to Bali, actually it was, and I went to this women's retreat. And I remember turning up there and she just looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" She said, I must have looked white as a ghost. And I was in, my nervous system must have been so, because I was right in the peak of, a lot of legal issues as well with this large company that was causing a lot of stress. A suicidal general manager. I had all sorts of things going on in the business, people poach. It was just a big mess. It just turned into a really big mess. And I just went, wow. It was a combination of growing too fast and also, making sure you're aware of where you balance your client book as well, things like that. But then also just balance. And also it wasn't in alignment. It was not, I was chasing the wrong thing. It's like Joseph Campbell says, you put the ladder up the wall, you climb it, you get to the top and you realize the ladder's on the wrong wall. I think I was at that point where the ladder was on the wrong wall. And so as a result of that awareness, everything changed. And I remember this moment in Bali. I was sitting there with my notebook, tears rolling down my face. I reach over, I grab this book, and it was The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, who I later ended up interviewing, which was a beautiful full circle moment for one of my podcasts that I did years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that, and then I went into a reflective practice, and I would really, really went deep, and I said, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I took myself through a number of modalities because I've done the work since I was 17. I was into this kind of work when I was 17. So, it wasn't hard for me to drop into it. So I dropped in and I really reevaluated it, and I arrived at the place that on the outside, it looked successful. Everything looked great. Multimillion-dollar business, wonderful relationship, nice car, nice suburb, sitting on boards, lots of awards. Everything looked great. But I was completely empty. There was a massive misalignment. My heart was just not even, I was all in my head space, in the head logic space. And I realized that my why didn't align with what it was I had created. And I was like, well, wow, why did I create that then? What was that about? And then later in life, it all makes sense.
Right.
But I really took myself to that place, and having that awareness completely changed the face of everything I did. It flipped everything on its head. I started to get, I suppose, guidance on working that I needed to work with kids, and also stepping back into music, which was I was a professional musician early years, between 17 and 21. And I travelled around Australia, back of a truck, harmonica, band, all that kind of stuff. So I did lived many lifetimes, but that's sort of where it began. And so music and children were the two components. And so here I am on these boards, and I'm going to flip the script. I'm hanging up the stilettos. I get rid of all my suits. And people are literally saying to me, have you lost your mind? I had people who thought I was losing it. And I'm just like, just wait.
No, I just found my mind.
Exactly. Yeah. And so took a massive pay cut, stepped off all the boards, and everything just reorganized to this place where then I was born into a whole new identity, a whole new way of being that was filling up my soul, not necessarily my pockets, but it filled up my soul. And then eventually the pockets got filled. But, it was really, it had to get stripped back to the bare bones and almost be at a point where I was literally on my knees and surrendering to get the heck out of my own way So then finally, what was true for me could come through, because I was so in my head for too long. And as soon as I was able to get out of my head, then everything started to change. And that's where Alma Education was born. And Alma Education was an iteration of the Global Good Foundation. And that came about because I realized that the Global Good Foundation, we were talking a lot about the topic of domestic violence. And what I noticed, and I'll always notice patterns, it's just one of my things with music and with everything, I notice patterns. And I was noticing these patterns and I'm like, I'm attracting a lot of broken people. I'm attracting, which is not a problem. I've been through that journey, but I was attracting what I noticed was by me talking about it more, I was actually emphasizing the issue and not the solution, right? So I was emphasizing the problem. And as a result, I was attracting a certain modality, or certain things were coming into my lives, and they were always volatile and destructive and chaotic. And I was just like, okay, something's not right here. So I knew that I needed to look at the solution, not the problem. So how do I talk about this in a different way? How do I create something in a different way that's more solution-based? And that's where it was about, right, well, what's the source of all these behavior issues that adults end up having? It's to do with a lack of understanding of their emotions.
Yes.
When they're little, like little. So fast forward, Alma Education is born. It's a global ed tech company. We've been in India. We did a school in India, 1,000 students. We did a study there. We found 56% increase in empathy in children as young as 6. We're rolling out the program in schools, in early childhood centres. We're educating teachers because we weren't taught it. So we're learning it as we teach it. And we are noticing some massive, massive changes in children as a result of this. And then you fast forward that's where the seed is born at that age. And then we can solve the very problem that I was trying to solve. So it's kind of like another level back.
I'm such a believer in that, only in that I remember having conversations about journaling with people in the past and saying, and I've been in recovery for many years. So I've been in recovery for 14 years now. And I remember saying, gosh, if I had had the ability to express myself the way that I did as I got older, when I was younger, like how would that have potentially changed my trajectory, in terms of how to be able to express and how. So I'm so behind that 110% in what you're just saying. It's getting back to the root of it before it gets to that.
It's funny how the world works, because there was a situation where I was actually supporting children who just got out of a domestic violence situation with the family, 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And here I was teaching them the very thing that I wished as a 10-year-old. For some reason I knew about this. I needed to find something. And I remember at 10 going, why is there nothing for me? I was already searching it. But here I am, full circle moment. These 2 gorgeous children. And I'm teaching them about how to understand their emotions through this cute little program we have about everyone has an energy ball. It sits in your heart. Sometimes we might throw our energy ball at someone else and they might catch it, and then we might feel what they're feeling. Now we can hold it, but we can only hold one ball at a time. So either we put smiles into the ball we caught and send it back, and then we can pick up our own. And so that's sort of kind of the conversation that we give to them. And so here's these 2 little girls under the age of, one's 5, one's about 7. And we teach them through color therapy, play therapy, sound therapy, and art therapy how to express their emotions. And these little girls are saying, I feel, my energy ball feels, they can articulate it, they can tell their mum where they're at, I can feel this. And then we give them a solution of what can you do with that. And we teach them to color in their day and fill in their energy ball with a different color. And it's just a beautiful, it's such an intricate neuroscience-based program that is so effective and is working so well. We're in about 30 centres here in WA in early childhood settings, and we're seeing amazing results. As these are, some kids are on behaviour plans. There was one centre, seven children on a behaviour plan, and within 2 weeks of doing our program, they were all off their behaviour plan.
See, that's powerful. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
To bridge this into the sound therapy, because I'm beyond fascinated by this. You said that music sort of came back into your life. What age was this around at this point? So you've left corporate.
Yep, left corporate. I was doing Elmer education at this point. So the charity had completed, the tech company had completed, and I was in this void of now starting to rebuild something else and shifting from an identity of the corporate woman sitting on boards to now shifting into working with children. And I can tell you I was far more petrified working with children than I was walking into a boardroom. But then as a result of that, I also ran leadership programs. So I would teach corporate organizations how to lead with more heart, because that was obviously something I learnt. And so I wanted to teach that, and the superpower of being able to dance between the head and the heart logic. Now, part of that program was a 12-week program. Go back a bit. I ended up, I was doing a podcast, and I told you I interviewed Don Miguel Ruiz, which is a beautiful full circle moment.
Yes.
And as a result of doing that, there was a US company that wanted me to co-host or host a consciousness TV network it was going to become at the time. And so I flew to the US, started interviewing these people. One of the people I interviewed was a frequency alchemist, and his name was Ian Morris from Listening to Smile, who has now been he's a very close friend of mine after more than a decade. We've become very good friends. So I said to him, what's a frequency alchemist? And he said to me, he explained about music. It holds certain frequencies, and that certain frequencies do resonate at different levels with the body. And he goes, but just sit down and experience it. So he plays the music. And I remember sitting there, and I thought someone was doing this to my head. And I look up, and I had my eyes closed, and I felt like someone was tapping, and I opened my eyes and went, what was that? And then there was no one there. And I was like, oh, okay. So I closed my eyes and tap, tap, tap. And I was like, I'll just sit in it. And just obviously something's happening here. So, and then I felt this just sensation all over my body. And then had to get into the interview after that, and then moved on, went back to Australia, building this program. And I thought to myself, I'd really like to do a mindfulness track for this program, for the leadership, as the end part of the program. And of course, then I thought of this guy, Ian. So I was like, oh, maybe he could do the music for me, and then I could talk over, not even sing, just talk over the top of it, because I hadn't sung in 15 years. So I was just building businesses instead of music.
Right. Yeah.
And so I called him. I said, I'm doing this program. Could you potentially put some of these frequency things you were talking about in there? And so I said, these are the outcomes for the program. This is what I want to do. And he goes, okay. And then so he went away and he created this incredible music. I sit down, I receive the music, I press play and close my eyes. And all of a sudden, without a word of a lie, all this music just comes out of me. Just started to flow. I started to sing again. I was just like, whoa, what is this? And it was all literally just coming out of me. So the old muso in me was like, I've got to record this. I've got to get this down before I forget. So I did a rough recording, and then went into a studio, recorded it as the first album, which is on Spotify and all that, Solification, which was basically 10-minute, 15-minute meditations with frequency. And I started there. And then I thought, oh, maybe people might like to listen to this. So I'll run a workshop and see if anyone turns up. 50 people filled the whole space every month in, month out, month in, month out. And all I did was press play on this track that I recorded. And then I thought, well, I better get something else. And so I got a bowl, and then I got like a drum. And then it just went from there. And then I met a beautiful person who really changed the trajectory of my appreciation of music. And she came into my life and showed me the Shruti box, which was my main instrument, ended up becoming my main instrument. And I remember the moment I saw this Shruti box, which is featured in the film, it's featured in the orchestra. And I was playing it, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is the instrument. And it's often used as a accompaniment instrument. And I remember saying to it, you are not going to be an accompaniment instrument anymore. You are going to be center stage. I will make you center stage because I love you that much. And I was just like so in love with this instrument.
I was going to say, and I saw part of the film where you are playing it, and it's almost like I know that I think I described it to you when we first spoke. I said, is it kind of like not an accordion, because it's a box that moves backwards and forwards, right? But incredible sound, incredible sound. Like very distinctive. anyways, just for those who don't know what it is, it's interesting to check this out. And the other instruments, by the way, in the orchestra, which are fascinating.
Yeah. So yes, so that's pretty much where it all began. And then after that, it was, and then most of the music that was now in the encoder orchestra actually came about from that instrument. So I wrote all the music on that instrument and then started doing a lot of sound work and therapeutic work. So I call it sound therapy with many people over a decade of, I did this over a decade, and I saw profound shifts in people's lives as a result. Like life-changing shifts.
Well, and I was going to say, how does this progress? First of all, did the film come before obviously the orchestra came before the film because the orchestra is featured in the film. What got the orchestra started, first of all?
Yeah. I was doing the music and one of my beautiful friends, just subtly yet not so, one of those beautiful subtle hammers. And she said, well, you should really do this with an orchestra. And I was thinking, oh gosh, no, I don't want to do that. I'm quite happy in my bubble. I'm more of an introvert than I am an extrovert, but I seem to get pushed out into these things. So I was like, no, yeah, that sounds okay, but no, I don't know. And she said, well, my friend is, she's the, I think she was in some orchestra or something. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think she headed up one of the main orchestras here. But then at the same time, serendipitously, one of my friends who had been friends with for over a decade, he was then appointed the CEO of WASO, West Australian Symphony Orchestra. So I catch up with him for a cuppa and I said, what do you think of this as an idea? Like, this is something that's come across my table. And he says, yeah, let's give it a go. And so we kind of started there and it didn't quite work, and he ended up leaving WASO. It did work, but we were kind of mid-project, and then he left. So, of course, my project had to go with it in some ways. And so then we were sitting down and he said, well, why don't we just do our own orchestra? And I'm like, yes. So because he's a conductor and, he is also, very, very well respected in the classical industry. This Mark Coughlin, he's very well respected in the industry. And so I said, yes, let's do that. And so his role was to bring together the orchestra. My role was to bring together different artists and things like that to complete the picture and the experience of what was encoder orchestra. And at the time, before all of this happened, he said, well, first we need to get a composer to actually convert the music you've written into an orchestral composition. And how the world works so wonderfully is that I was recording at the studio, and about 3:00 in the morning, I wake up with this idea, and I ring next day, I ring the guy at the studio, Cliff, and a lovely person. And I said to him, oh, do you think we could is there a software that can convert my music into like a basic musical score? Because this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm thinking. And he says, hang on, let me call my business partner. Calls his business partner. Calls me back, says, yes, there is, but actually my business partner would like to be involved, and he is the head of composition at the West Australian Arts of Performing Arts in WA, and so, which is like WAPA, it's called WAPA. And so I was like, what, composition? He's like, yes. So then we had our composer. And so then he basically went about, very talented, and he started to then interpret the music with the orchestral composition and write the pieces for the string orchestra. So we had a 14-piece string orchestra, but we tuned them all down to this tuning center because I use a different tuning center, which we feel can be a part of that therapeutic experience that people are having, because the sound wave is slightly slower than what you would typically hear.
Okay, because you said it was like the 432 HZ or something, but is that, so it's like, is it a shorter rotation? Is it, I'm trying to think what a vibrational.
So basically, when we listen to music, typically it's around 440 hertz, which is 440 cycles of the sound wave per second. Okay. So 432 is slightly lower and slower. So it's slightly flatter to people who are pitch perfect. You can only just tell the difference slightly. It's just slightly flatter. But it is said to be quite therapeutic. There's some studies out there that have demonstrated the beneficial qualities of the 432 hertz frequency, some quantitative data and peer-reviewed stuff that's out there. And it was one of those things that because my instrument was tuned at that center, and I do believe that because I received a lot of therapeutic benefits from it, and so did many people that I witnessed over 10 years. And I was like, there's something in this frequency. Like, is it the frequency? Is it the music? Is it the way that we're doing it? Like, what is it? And so when we brought the orchestra together, I said, let's get the neuroscientists in and let's start to measure people and see what's happening to people, because there's something happening. And of course, intuitively, I know what it is, but I also have this like logical left brainer type.
You need the data.
I want the data. I want to know. I just want to see, even I don't need it to validate what I intuitively know, because I've seen way too much to really, it's without doubt. I have no doubt. But I know that in order for us to be able to connect with more people, people want data. People want to see, well, what's the benefit of me doing this? And so I went about doing that, and then we filmed it, and that's sort of how it all came about. It's just this, I did not plan it.
I was going to say that, so the documentary came out of that exploration.
It became one aspect. The documentary was and is episodic, so there's going to be multiple episodes, and it just so happened that as we started the first episode that I was doing this with Encoder, and so the guys said, well, let's capture that. And then after that, we'll be doing more episodes on the science of sound and go down that rabbit hole, because the first one is the first episode, and then we're planning to do multiple episodes of, looking at sound. Yeah.
But is the documentary, is it out yet?
It is out it's screening in cinemas in the US, and we've screened across Australia in cinemas and cinemas as well. But in the US, there are it's at some independent cinemas. If people want to see the film, because it's not available yet on streaming, we're encouraging people that want to host can actually find an independent cinema, and we'll take care of the rest. And then what we do is we manage it, we market it, and we fill up the cinema. But if there's people there that can host it and can help us fill the cinema, get people there, then that's how we're doing it right now. So it's very much an independent grassroots kind of approach.
And when did this all start?
Since 2021.
Okay. So it's been a couple of years that you've been working on it. I love that. And of course, we're going to have all of the information in the show notes for people to, if anybody's interested. But just a little bit more about, so you are talking with scientists, neuroscientists.
Yes. Yeah, professors.
And professors. Okay, so this is a whole exploration. And are there, in the film, are you coming, like when you do the symphony, as an example, because I saw part of that, where you have the audience there, do audience members come up to you and tell you their experiences?
Absolutely.
Are there so that would be fascinating to me.
Oh, it is. It constantly blows me away just what happens. I've had people walk in with pain and walk out without it. I've had people have lifetimes of physical issues and walk out without them. Whether that sustains, I don't know. Like, I don't want to ever claim that what I do cures, or and it doesn't replace anything medically or anything like that. But these are just everyday people that are having profound responses. I've had people who, for example, it was just even a physical response. We had a gentleman who was in a wheelchair and very, very non-responsive, hunched down, looking down, barely moved. And then by the end of the concert, he was sitting upright and he was looking. And we've had practitioners who, like, our work has been used in clinical settings for psychotherapists that are finding that it's having such a high rate of cut through using the music. It's had 100% uptake, and they said it's been one of the best therapeutic tools that they've used in a clinical setting. So they're using it. We've got psychotherapists, we've got some medical doctors that use it as well as a tool just to help with anxiety, trauma, PTSD, stress. And it's just, and then we also did air here nationally on SBS on the TV station for about I think it was for about maybe a year, so people could stream it on the national TV station SBS. And I've had random people call me, like one person called me and she said, I don't even listen to this kind of music, but it was on in the background, and then all of a sudden I just found myself like lying down on the bed, and for the first time in almost 10 years, I felt so much peace, and there was just such a massive release. And she says, I don't know what happened. And people are calling me going, what happened to me? Like, it's just like, it's having impacts. And this is the beautiful thing about it. The intention in the music, the frequency of the music, all of my music is at about between 50 to 60 BPM beats per minute. So it's, it's a really slow heart rhythm. And what happens is when you listen to something like that and it becomes the dominant frequency in your space, that by entrainment, your cells begin to mimic that. And so it's not uncommon for people to feel, in my experiences, they'll get pins and needles or they'll get heaviness in certain parts of their body. And this is often where emotional pain body points are held in the body. So, we have trauma, the cells remember, and it comes out as a sore shoulder or a sore this, Louise Hay, you can heal your life type stuff. So there is and The Body Keeps the Score is another really great book that talks about that. So the sound has a way. And the way, in this particular way we do the sound, is it has a way of finding those parts, and people experience heaviness in those parts of the body, so much so that they have to breathe through it. I always say to them, just breathe through it. Don't be worried, just breathe through it, and then it moves through. A lot of the time it's shifted. Sometimes it takes more than, I always say you can't get it in one session. You'll get experiences, but you need to expose yourself to it every day, which is why I've got the 10 to 15 minute guided meditations to do. Just exposing a little bit each day, and then exposing yourself to a live format as well once a month. I have seen people's lives completely transform multiple times.
Oh, Tenille, well, first of all, I cannot wait, because I've listened to your music and it is beautiful.
Thank you.
Aside from the therapeutic benefits of it. But so I dare ask this because I know that there's probably millions of things that are coming up, but what is next? So what is next for you? What is the next iteration? What are you working on next with this therapy?
Yeah, so next is there's a few projects I'm working on at the moment. Some musical projects that I'm doing. I'm collaborating with some other artists, and so bringing in some different experiences as well. And so, eventually I think especially coming up 2026, it'll be, we're in 2026, will be, that happened fast, didn't it?
Can you believe it? Believe it?
No, I can't believe it. And so, this year is really about my voice and using a lot more of my voice, collaborating with different artists, creating different experiences. So, for example, in March, we're doing one where we're bringing together a breathwork journey mixed with my sound, mixed with light therapy. And so we're doing all three, like chromotherapy type approach in a really beautiful space. And then there'll be other projects that I'll be doing later in the year with other artists, and looking at how we'll do that and maybe weave that into what we're doing in Encoder, and working with different people and just exploring, I mean, I don't know, it's not written yet, where there's new pieces that have been written that are in progress. But yeah, right now I feel like I'm sort of in this I'm in like a little void right now. To take a breath and just to reflect. And, a lot in my life has changed. So I feel like before I make any decisions on anything further than that, I just need to be in a space of reflection. But right now, what's clear is, there'll be some different experiences coming up this year for people, and more albums coming out, as well as more work in the corporate environment, helping a lot of people with this work and using this as a tool for stress and for mental health as well.
Oh, Tenille, it has been amazing having this conversation with you, because it opens up such curiosity in me so much, because I feel like there is so much that can be done with it. And of course, you and I have talked a little bit about that. The corporate realm could use this.
This is the thing. I've walked into boardrooms now as a sound therapist instead of as a board member, and I've done this work for them, and I've had people, like grown men in beautiful $2,000-$3,000 suits, bawling their eyes out. So it's doing something for people. They're shifting. Some people respond, some people don't. Some people, it just depends on where they're at. But what I have seen is the majority, they experience it and they've got no idea what happened, but something happened. And that's where it starts.
I love that. And that when energy shifts like that and people can't even really put their finger on it, that's where things start to happen, right? And that's where people can really heal. Tenille, thank you so much for your time and talking us through all of this. like I said, and I'm going to talk to you after this just a little bit about your music in terms of specificity, what I should start listening to first. But just amazing work that you're doing. And I cannot wait to hear how you continue on with this, because I know it's going to continue to open up so much for you and for everybody that you're helping.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so again. Much. It's an honor to meet you and to be on the podcast. Thank you again.
It was great to meet you too. All right. Well, that's it for now. Until next time. Thank you for listening to The Change Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, so more women like you can find us and take their next step toward creating a life they love.